It is 5 p.m. on a Friday, and on one side of the table you have the United States Pentagon wielding a $200 million contract and like a Cold War era law that allows them to literally command private industry.
Yeah, and on the other side, you've got this group of Silicon Valley engineers who are just flat out refusing to hand over the keys to an artificial intelligence system that, well, they believe is simply too dangerous for warfare.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. To you, our audience of curious learners, we have something really totally unprecedented today.
We do, yeah. It's kind of wild.
You asked us to break down this highly sensitive slide deck that's been circulating in defense circles. It's titled Anthropic versus the Pentagon, the AI Ethics Showdown.
And honestly, it reads like the climax of some geopolitical thriller. But, I mean, this isn't a movie. This is a very real, very present standoff.
Right.
You are watching the bleeding edge of Silicon Valley software engineering collide, like head-on with the ultimate physical authority of the United States military.
But before we do, because this slide deck deals directly with U.S. government actions, the military, and some really deeply charged political and ethical themes, I need to put a quick pin in something for everyone listening. We are not here to take sides. Not at all. Our only mission today is to impartially report the facts, the technical realities, and the arguments of both parties exactly as they are laid out in these slides.
Right. We just want you to understand the core conflict here.
Because by the end of this deck, you are going to see exactly how a $200 million standoff might totally redefine the rules of war, civil liberties, and artificial intelligence.
Which is so crucial because, this isn't just a corporate spat over pricing. It is a fundamental disagreement about who controls the most powerful technology of our generation.
Absolutely. So let's open the deck. Slide 1 sets the stage immediately. The title is The Core Conflict: Safeguards versus Military Use.
Yeah, and it outlines two completely opposing forces.
Right. On one side, we have Anthropic. They're a frontier AI lab famous for this safety-first approach, and they have drawn what the slide calls a bright red line.
They are refusing to remove the internal guardrails that prevent their AI from being used for autonomous weapons targeting or, domestic surveillance.
But to understand what that actually means, we have to look at how these guardrails work, like mechanically, right?
Yeah, it is not just a toggle switch on a dashboard that Anthropic can just flip from safe to lethal.
Right. It's not that simple.
No, these safeguards are baked into the fundamental weights and the neural pathways of the model through a process called constitutional AI.
Okay.
The model is mathematically trained to refuse requests that lead to violence or illegal profiling. So Anthropic is saying that stripping those out would require fundamentally rebuilding the entire brain of the AI.
Wow. Meanwhile, on the exact opposite side of slide 1, the Pentagon is making their demand crystal clear.
Yeah, they are not backing down.
Not at all. The Department of Defense wants all lawful use access. They are offering a $200 million contract, which is detailed on slide 2, by the way, but the contingency is 0 contractor-imposed restrictions.
Right. They want the software to do whatever they legally order it to do, period.
Exactly.
Because the DoD is looking at this as a standard procurement contract.
Yeah.
Like, if they buy a piece of hardware, they decide how it's deployed on the battlefield. And they're applying that exact same logic to software.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's kind of like buying a state-of-the-art sports car, but the manufacturer installed an unbreakable governor, so you literally can't drive it over the speed limit.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
And the government is saying, hey, we bought the car, we should be able to drive it however we want.
Yeah, or it's like hiring a brilliant, highly capable, but strictly pacifist translator.
Oh, right.
The military wants this translator to read intercepted enemy communications and pinpoint the exact coordinates for a drone strike. But the translator's core moral code prevents them from helping kill people.
And the Pentagon is just sitting across the desk saying, look, we pay your salary, we have the clearance, just translate the words.
Exactly. The Pentagon expects a tool, but Anthropic is providing an entity with a hard-coded ethical framework.
Which brings us to slide 3, titled Key Players on the Front Line. Because, behind the corporate logos, there are actual humans driving this.
Yeah, on the left side of the slide, you have Dario Amodei. He's the CEO of Anthropic.
Right, and he's a former OpenAI researcher, isn't he?
He is. He actually splintered off to found Anthropic, specifically because he felt the industry wasn't taking AI safety seriously enough.
Wow, okay.
The slide literally describes his mission as championing ethical guardrails.
Wow. So he walked away from massive success to build a company entirely predicated on making sure AI doesn't go rogue. Like, that is his entire brand.
Exactly the point. And standing across from him, on the right side of slide 3, is Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary.
And he is pushing aggressively for unrestricted access.
Yeah, his argument is basically that private citizens in California should not have vetoed power over the strategic capabilities of the United States Armed Forces.
I mean, you can see the logic there.
Sure, but it's the third entity listed at the bottom of slide 3 that turns this from a negotiation into a full-blown crisis.
Oh, the Pentagon officials threatening to invoke the Defense Production Act.
Yes, and this raises an important question because, well, the Defense Production Act...
Wait, I need to stop you there. The Defense Production Act. I thought that was a law used to force car factories to build tanks during World War II.
Yeah, or to mandate the production of ventilators during the pandemic.
Right. So how do you use an industrial manufacturing law to force a tech company to rewrite abstract code?
That is the big question.
Like, you can't just seize a server and magically get an aligned neural network.
You really can't. And
Yeah.
that is what is so legally fascinating about this tension. It is a Cold War-era law designed for physical goods.
Yeah.
Applying it to 21st century frontier AI is totally untested territory. The government could, theoretically, compel Anthropic to prioritize DoD computing requests over commercial clients.
So effectively seizing their server compute.
Right, but could they force Anthropic engineers to sit at their keyboards and intentionally break the safety protocols they spent years building?
Oh, wow.
That borders on compelled speech and forced labor.
That's intense.
It is. It's the sheer physical might of the state trying to pry open the digital safeguards of a private lab. And honestly, no one actually knows how a judge would rule on it.
And that untested legal threat becomes the ticking clock on slide 4. The presentation moves right into the ultimatum.
Yeah, and the slide is formatted with these stark red-bordered boxes.
It's very dramatic. The first box is that 5 p.m. Friday deadline we mentioned. Comply with unrestricted access or the $200 million contract is terminated.
But the second box is what really caught my eye.
The blacklisting threat.
Yes. The Pentagon is threatening to designate Anthropic as a supply chain risk.
And what does that actually mean for them?
It is essentially a corporate death sentence in the federal ecosystem.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If the DoD formally labels your software a supply chain risk, it doesn't just cancel this one contract. That label triggers a cascade across the entire U.S. government.
Wait, so like...
Suddenly, the Department of Energy, the Treasury, the FBI, none of them can legally buy your software.
Oh my gosh. So Anthropic wouldn't just be losing the military, they would be exiled from the largest buyer of technology on planet Earth.
Exactly. And yet we move to slide 5, titled Why Anthropic Says No.
Right. Despite the money, despite the threat of federal exile, they are holding their ground.
They are.
And the slide outlines 3 specific pillars for their refusal. The first one is that autonomous weapons are unreliable.
Yeah, they argue that current AI systems simply lack the contextual awareness to make life or death targeting decisions without human firmly in the loop.
We really have to look at the mechanism of why that is, though.
Yeah, let's get into it.
When we talk about an AI making a mistake or hallucinating, it is not like a human making a typo.
No, not at all.
An AI doesn't actually see a military convoy. It processes a massive pattern of pixels.
Right. So if the sunlight hits the yellow paint of, say, a civilian school bus in a specific way.
Exactly. And if that matches the statistical weight of a mobile missile launcher in its training data, the AI classifies it as a target.
That is a statistical misfire.
Yeah. In a chat window, a hallucination is funny. But on a battlefield, that math error is lethal and irreversible.
And Anthropic is saying the math just isn't bulletproof enough for warfare.
Which makes sense. Now, the second pillar they cite on slide 5 is the legal landscape regarding mass surveillance.
Yeah, they explicitly point out there is no legal framework.
Right. There are no existing federal laws that adequately govern how an AI can be used to surveil domestic citizens.
Because again, we're talking about API access. If Anthropic gives the government an open pipe to their intelligence, and an intelligence agency hooks that API up to a massive database of intercepted communications.
The AI could instantly read, analyze, and flag millions of emails and texts a second.
Exactly. And Anthropic would have absolutely zero visibility into whose data is being processed.
So they consider that regulatory vacuum just too dangerous to supply with their technology.
Which leads to their third pillar on the slide, ethical responsibility.
Okay, but let me play a devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure, go for it.
Putting myself in the shoes of a taxpayer. If this AI is ultimately just a tool, like a piece of software, Why does Anthropic feel it's their personal responsibility to police the U.S. military?
That's a very common question.
Doesn't the Pentagon, equipped with actual generals and intelligence analysts, know better about what it needs for national defense than a tech CEO?
You'd think so, yeah.
Like, we elect leaders to make these life and death calls, not software developers.
It is a totally valid pushback. And honestly, you are voicing the exact frustration felt inside the Pentagon right now.
Right.
But you have to look at how Anthropic views their own creation. To them, building a machine that can process billions of parameters a second creates an intrinsic moral liability for the creator.
Ah, okay.
If you design a tool that is so powerful, it can fundamentally alter the balance of military power, and you know its flaws, simply washing your hands once the check clears is, in their view, totally negligent.
I see. Which transitions us perfectly to the Pentagon's defense, which is laid out very clearly on slide 6, titled Pentagon's Position and Concerns.
Yeah, and the Department of Defense has a highly logical counterargument here.
Their first point is legal compliance assurance.
Right. They explicitly state they have absolutely no intent to deploy this AI for mass domestic surveillance.
And no intent to build fully autonomous lethal systems either. They say all use will strictly comply with U.S. law and the Geneva Conventions.
The military is essentially arguing that Anthropic is shadowboxing a threat that doesn't even exist within the strict bounds of military doctrine.
Right.
The U.S. military has incredibly dense protocols for the use of force. They aren't asking the AI to pull the trigger.
No, they want the AI to process sensor data, optimize logistics, and analyze enemy cyber threats.
Exactly. And that's the third bullet point on slide 6, battlefield integration goals.
Right. They want to use these language models to parse massive amounts of incoming intelligence.
Yeah, imagine a commander receiving drone feeds, intercepted radio chatter, and satellite imagery all at exactly the same time.
It's too much for a human.
Right. But an AI can fuse that sensor data instantly to keep soldiers safe. So the DoD's stance is that by restricting the software, Anthropic is actively making U.S. troops less safe.
They actually call it contractor overreach.
Because the friction here is really about trust.
Yeah.
The Pentagon says trust our protocols. And Anthropic says, well, our software doesn't run on trust, it runs on mathematical guardrails, and we aren't removing them.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We turn to slide 7, titled The Broader AI Arms Race.
Oh, this slide is wild.
There is a bar chart mapping out a contested landscape of defense contractors. It shows the Pentagon isn't just talking to Anthropic.
No, they are simultaneously negotiating with Google, OpenAI, and xAI.
Right.
And this slide drops the biggest revelation in the entire briefing.
The text right beneath the chart.
Yes, if you read that text, it notes that Anthropic was actually, at one point, the sole large language model provider operating on classified government networks.
They literally had the monopoly.
They did. But what's fascinating here is because of this exact ethical standoff, the Pentagon has already swapped them out for Elon Musk's company, xAI.
Wait, really? They just unplugged them and moved on?
Exactly, they just swapped them out.
That is crazy.
And the mechanics of why that works are fascinating. Elon Musk's AI, Grok, is architecturally built with a completely different philosophy.
Right, it's famously designed to be less restricted.
Yeah, it has far fewer baked-in filters compared to Anthropic's highly constitutional model.
So for the Pentagon, if one API has a governor on the engine and another API from xAI lets them press the gas pedal to the floor.
They are simply going to reroute their classified networks to the faster car.
Wow.
It proves that the government's demand is entirely inelastic. If you won't build it for them, they will just find someone who will.
And that leads directly into the macro stakes, which the presentation details across slides 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Slide 8, Ethics versus Authority, notes that this is no longer a theoretical dorm room debate. The tension between corporate ethics and state power is playing out in real time.
And slide 9 breaks down what's at risk for everyone involved.
For the Pentagon, the biggest risk is time.
Right. Absolutely. Modernizing their digital infrastructure takes years.
So seeding even 6 months of AI development while they negotiate with Valley tech companies is viewed as a massive vulnerability.
Especially when global rivals, like China, are tightly integrating their own state-run tech sectors with their military without any of these ethical roadblocks.
Right, they don't have to deal with these debates.
No, not at all.
But the risks for Anthropic are existential in a completely different way. The slide notes that if Anthropic caves to the pressure and removes the guardrails, they risk massive talent attrition.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
The brilliant engineers who build these models hold all the leverage in Silicon Valley right now.
Yeah, they can work wherever they want.
Exactly. And many of them specifically joined Anthropic because of the safety mission.
So if management compromises that mission for a defense contract, the brain trust will simply quit and walk across the street to a competitor.
It would erode public trust and destroy their core identity.
Right.
But the slide also points out the risk for the entire industry. The outcome of this Friday deadline is a bellwether.
Every CEO in tech is watching this standoff.
Oh, absolutely. Because if the U.S. government successfully uses the threat of blacklisting and the Defense Production Act to crush Anthropic's ethical boundaries,
Other companies might just quietly strip their own safety features away before the Pentagon even knocks on their door.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final piece of the deck, slide 10. Conclusion: the future of AI ethics in defense.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, slide 10 synthesizes the real tragedy of this situation. It highlights an urgent need for frameworks.
Meaning laws.
Yes. The reason this standoff is so volatile is because there's a massive policy vacuum. Lawmakers and regulators are flying completely blind.
Right. There are no clear enforceable federal laws that specifically dictate how a neural network can be applied to a kinetic battlefield.
None. The slide calls it a structural tension laid bare. It's a gap in our societal architecture.
Because Congress hasn't acted, the profound boundaries between civil liberties, lethal force, and artificial intelligence are currently being decided by a handful of tech executives and defense officials arguing in a closed boardroom.
It is a defining moment. It forces us to ask whether ethical boundaries created by private citizens can actually withstand the sheer, coercive force of sovereign government authority.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener.
Yeah.
We promised that this deep dive would show you how a single contract dispute is redefining the future. And walking through these slides, it is stunningly clear. The precedent that gets set at 5 p.m. this Friday will not stay confined to a classified server room. The power dynamics established here will dictate how tech giants interact with the government for the next 50 years.
Yep.
It will influence the privacy of the technology in your pocket, the parameters of global surveillance, and the fundamental rules of modern warfare.
And as we close this slide deck, there is one lingering, frankly terrifying question that the Pentagon's presentation doesn't even attempt to answer.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if the government has to threaten blacklisting and dust off a Cold War-era law just to force a U.S.-based corporation to hand over its AI,
Yeah.
what happens when the next massive breakthrough isn't built by a company at all?
Wait, what do you mean?
What happens when frontier AI is built by a decentralized, anonymous, open-source network of developers scattered across the globe?
Oh, wow.
The Pentagon cannot subpoena a decentralized network. They cannot threaten an open-source protocol with a canceled contract. And they certainly cannot force them to comply.
That is a completely different kind of arms race, and one we might already be losing.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us as we went slide by slide through this incredible intelligence. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.